So in the previous demonstration, we saw how to provision the Lewis service in our Azure subscription. Now I want to actually go and use the Lewis portal to create an app that has intents and entities and all the things that I need in order to give me that language understanding. Well, previously I created a Lewis resource in my Azure subscription, and then I followed the link from that to this Lewis app portal where I can create my Lewis app. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new app, and that's going to ask me for a name for this app, and I'm going to call this Home Automation. And we'll have this in English, that's the language that this app is going to speak, and I could add a description as well. And then when I'm done, I'll just click done and create the new app. So here's my app, it's called Home Automation. And if I just go ahead and open that up, you can see that I get this UI within which I can work and create and test my app. Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is to think about the intents in the app. So I'm going to create an intent. So on the Intents tab here, we'll click Create New Intent, and we'll give this a name. And this app is going to turn lights on and off, effectively, is what it's going to do. So one of my intents is to turn the light on. So we'll just call it Light On. And that goes and creates an intent called Light On, and I'm ready to start adding utterances that are going to be the way that people will try and initiate this intent. People will signal that that's the intent that they have. So I could put in multiple samples. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to put in one simple example here of switch the light on. So we've got an utterance here now of switch the light on, and that's going to signify the light on intent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the word light here. You can see it puts these little square brackets around it. And I can use that to signify that this thing is an entity. And I could go and browse some pre-built entities, or I could create a new entity. So I'm just going to create a new entity called light. And that creates this new entity called light. It's a simple entity. There are more complex entities that I could create, and as you explore Lewis in more depth, you'll find uses for these more complex entities. But in this case, we've got a simple entity called light, and I can see that that's now highlighted as being an entity that I've got in my utterance here. So I've created this intent of light on. I've created an utterance for that. I could create multiple utterances, but in this case, I've just created one, and I've specified that this light thing here is an entity. I'm going to go back to my intents and create a second intent here, on the basis that if I want to turn the light on, I might also want to turn it off. And again, we'll just put in an utterance. And again, we'll specify that light in this case is an entity, but it already knows about the entity called light, so that's listed for me. So we'll just go and select that, and then that's another instance of that entity. So I've now got a couple of intents, very simple intents. Each intent has one utterance that tells us that intent is what we're wanting to do. And we've specified that the word light in those utterances is the entity that this intent relates to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and train this app so that it knows about applying those utterances to those intents. And then once it's trained, I can actually test it. So we'll bring up this little test window here, and we'll type one of our utterances. And it comes back from that with the suggestion that this is for the light on intent. So that's the intent that it reckons that one means. And I can actually even try text that I haven't typed in for the utterance. So I could try something like this. Turn the light on. And again, it comes back with light on, and the one there indicates it's 100% confident that that's what I meant. So even though that's not the exact utterance that I originally specified, it's smart enough to realize that that's close enough to what I presumably mean. So I've now created my app. I've added my two intents. I've created the utterances for those intents and identified the entity, and I've tested that out. I'm now ready to go and publish this. So if I click on the Publish tab here, I've got the option of publishing this to a production slot or to a staging slot. In this case, I'm going to publish it to production. And I'm just going look at what I want to do with that in terms of resources and keys. Now, there's a key here already. There's a key in the West US region here that's generated. When I created the app, this key was generated for me to test it with. So there's a test key that I can use there. Now, if I'm actually going to publish into production, then what I probably want to do is use a key for my Azure resource that I've created for Lewis. So I can add a key, and I select the GUID that's associated with my Azure subscription user account. So in this case, that's that. It will only list the ones that you have. So when you're logged in, it will figure out which are your Azure tenants. And once we've got that, I can then select the subscription. I've only got one subscription, so we'll select that. And then within that subscription, I've got that Lewis 012345 key that I created earlier. Now that, of course, is an F0 key, so it's still restricted. It's just the same as the one that was generated with the app would be. But if I had an actual production key in there, I could select that key, add that to the app, and then what we'll find is down here, I've now got this app associated with both of those keys, and that way I can would put it into production and use the appropriate endpoint for the key that I want to bill the service against, and that will allow me to put that into production using a production level key. So you can see here that what I've got is this endpoint, and that endpoint is what the client application will use to connect to my Lewis app in order to initiate these intents, and that's something that we'll look at in the next topic.